Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and I hope you're having a great Wednesday or whenever you're listening to today's episode. I am back, and I'm not going to say I'm back for consistency because I thought that I would be this last time, and I think it's been about a month since I have recorded. But I did recently see that I have recorded 108 episodes. So if you've not listened to every single episode I've ever put out, that might be a good sign to do that if I don't upload on a Thursday to do that. But hopefully I am back and back consistently. I really just have had a difficult time getting into the groove of things, and that is not something I need to bore you with. Nonetheless, hello. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here for another episode. I am so excited about today's episode. I have on Emily. Now, she was a nurse, now she's a doula, and really just her experience with birth and postpartum and how to treat your body during pregnancy was so insightful, and I just knew she's somebody I wanted to have on because she has seen both worlds. She worked in labor and delivery, now she's a doula, and so just having somebody that can see both and has seen both. I will say this is a podcast episode for somebody who is more naturally minded when it comes to birth. When it comes to pregnancy. This is not for you if you want to have a traditional standard birth in a hospital. There is no shame around that, but I do just want you to know you're probably not the person who will gain the most from today's episode. I do think there is just a lot of conflicting views, and I don't know, there's a lot of judgment around birth and how women choose to birth, and I've always said that women should birth however they feel the most comfortable birthing. And that is something I still firmly believe. If having a home birth is not for you, then do what feels comfortable for you. Maybe that is a midwife clinic. Maybe that is a birthing center. Maybe that is a hospital, right? It could be anything. But I really just don't love the judgment around birth. And if you are more naturally minded, right, there's a lot of I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of criticism that I personally hear. We always think that there's one way and that's the right way to do it. And if you do anything outside of that one way, it's unsafe and you're being reckless. And I just don't believe that. And I never really have. I think there's a lot of judgments not even judgments, there's a lot of opinions that I have that I kind of have kept to myself because I do know people around me maybe believe something differently, and that is totally okay. If you have not listened to my whole birth story, I did share that back when I had Oliver in March, and it was shortly after that, so it should be an episode probably in March, maybe like my raw and real birth story. And I really just lay it all out there, what my labor looked like. I had a really great pregnancy, took really good care of my body many years before pregnancy, then during pregnancy, and I really think that did contribute to how my labor went. I did give birth in a hospital, and it was unmedicated. So it was an experience that I still think about often, and I'm like, whew, doing that again is going to be hard. But I think not having an epidural was the right thing for me. Something I'm very proud of myself for. And I think I've heard like, well, you don't get an award for doing it without an epidural. And that's true. But I feel good about not having an epidural. I just feel good about that decision. There are some things that happened that I didn't love in the hospital, truthfully. And if my husband wasn't opposed to it, I would probably be much more wanting to do a home birth next, except it's illegal in Nebraska. So there's that. But the options in Nebraska just are not very broad when it comes to delivery. And so being in a hospital, I really had a good experience. I can't complain about much other than after I delivered, they gave me Pitocin and didn't really ask about it. I had minimal bleeding, no tearing, still just gave it to me. And if you're listening and you're in the medical field, you're probably like, well, yeah, they're doing what was safe, right? They're doing the safest thing for you. They're preventing extra blood from leaving your body, right? And I think that is how everything is laid out in the hospital, right? It's like, well, they're doing this to protect you. They're doing this for your safety. You should be grateful because they are doing this for you. And as I've had time to think more about it, it really just is not something that I appreciate. Like, I do appreciate how they took care of me, and I do appreciate what they did for me. And I did have a midwife that was actually delivering Oliver, which was great. I got the midwife that I wanted. But even just the narrative around, well, they did that to keep you safe. It's almost like how we gaslight women into thinking like, well, they're doing it to keep you safe. Like, you shouldn't be upset that they did that, or you shouldn't argue with them because they're the professional and they're doing it to keep you safe. And although I'm not saying that that is a bad thing, and I do think that nurses have the best of intentions most of the time, it is, again, when we just think about it, it's like, wait a second, like, there's still something that was done to me without my consent, right? It was like, oh, right after, and maybe in some form that I signed along the way. I had to sign a ton of different forms because there's things that we did not do with Oliver, just to kind of cover the hospital. But there are so many policies in hospitals that I do understand why some moms have an ill taste in their mouth about that environment. Like I said, really don't have much to complain about except for a few little things that in the moment, like, I just wanted Oliver to be fine and I just wanted a healthy baby. And that's, again, what we're told. Well, you have a healthy baby. That's the most important. And it is, yes, like, that is the most important. But as women, we are also very in tune with what our body needs when we lean into that. And when we are just in tune in general, I'm very in tune with my body. And so being in an environment that almost kind of creates a disconnect between you and your body, you're told to do things that maybe don't feel right, but you do them anyway if there's pressure or if it's policy, whatever the case is. And now I'm probably rambling, and maybe you're listening and you're like, whoa, that's a different opinion than I thought she had. I really just have a lot of opinions, honestly. I just have a lot of opinions that I don't share because I don't like conflict. I don't like to ruffle feathers, and I do like to have conversations around things, right? That's why I have a podcast. Although it's a lot of me talking to myself, I like to have people on that are all on all ends of the spectrum. And honestly, like, I'll continue to do that, even because now, especially because now my focus really is preconception health prior to and during your pregnancy. Like, I want to bring on people that know everything about a lot of things and just get different opinions so that you can then form your own opinion. And ultimately, I want that with every episode I release, is for you to listen and then form your own opinion. I'm not here to convince you or persuade you, but truly just to give you information. That's not to say people I have on won't really lean one way or the other. But I really just want to bring on people who are knowledgeable, and Emily is just that. So I'm not going to do a lot of a personal catch up on today's episode, but really just get right into our conversation and let you just learn more from her and all that she has to share. All right, so today I have on Emily, and we're really just going to dive into today's episode. So Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
I want to start with just you sharing who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Emily. I am currently a mom of two, and a traditional doula. I was actually a labor and delivery nurse for a little bit. I graduated back in 2019 and worked in labor and delivery for about a year in 2020, which was super fun. Um, but anyways, I had gone into nursing school with the intent of becoming a midwife. And went to labor and delivery. It was kind of like just culture shock. Like, I knew I wanted to be in the out of hospital setting, but it was like, man, like, you hear about like the cascade of interventions and all of these things, and like, like women not getting informed consent and all this stuff, and it's like you just see it firsthand. Like, you see just so much, just so much. So anyways, I ended up, after a year, I was like, I literally cannot do this anymore. Like, it was just too much for me mentally. I was like sobbing on my way to work every single day. Like, it was just too much for me. It was like I would watch these healthy babies, and we have to constantly watch like a strip, which is like the baby's heart rate and how much it's like fluctuating, and you learn to read it. And I would watch babies who, like, mom just got an epidural or mom just got pitocin, and it was like it would just change like that. And you're just like on the edge of your seat waiting, like, do I need to like rush in there? Like, it was too much. It was too much for me, and I was just like, it is not supposed to be like this. Birth is not supposed to be like this. So I went after that and worked for an OB-GYN, which that wasn't much better because then it's like now I'm prescribing birth control to teenagers, like everything that I don't believe in. I was just like, nursing is not, it's not for me. It's not for me. And I was pregnant with my first when I worked for that OB-GYN. And anyways, long story short, I was going through a birth center to have him. I ended up having to transfer and ultimately ended up in a C-section. And so the OB-GYN who I worked for was actually the woman who did my C-section. And so that was kind of like a weird thing. Anyways, after that, left that job. That was actually a forced exit, which was fun. I think they just knew that I was not like aligned, and I was pretty outspoken on social media already. And I think they just didn't want that associated with them. So fine. But anyways, I went to pediatric home health after that, which was an experience. And then we ended up moving up to Indiana. My husband took a job with a pretty big pay raise, and I was able to quit as a nurse and stay home. And that's when I kind of started my journey to being a doula. I knew I wanted to serve women in birth, and I wanted to serve them how I wanted to serve them and not how I was tied to serving them by policy, you know? So anyways, I went through a doula mentorship. That was kind of like an ongoing thing. And yeah, it's been really great to be able to like step into just serving women and just showing up for them. And I think, we think of doulas as like, oh, they have, these like certifications and they went through like these big trainings. And I really just think that doulas are just women sitting with women, and they want to be there. They want to support you through birth. And I firmly believe it doesn't take, these crazy like DONA certifications or whatever, like if you want to be serving women in birth, like you can just serve women in birth, So anyways, I then had a home birth, a really redemptive home birth. Well, rewind, I had a miscarriage right before we moved. I was still working as a nurse, had a loss. It was like absolutely devastating. Like it was just it truly wrecked me. Like I did not know if I was gonna make it. Like it was just, I don't know. I think, we talk about loss and it's like, wow, that's really hard and really sad. And it's like, no, it shakes your entire world. So I went on to have a really redemptive home birth. So it was a home birth VBAC, and my rainbow baby. So it was very, very beautiful, redemptive birth. And it was a 12-hour labor start to finish, which compared to 56 from the one before was
Oh my
great.
gosh, 56 hours.
Yeah, 56. So anyways, it was a really, really beautiful experience. I really prepped my body a lot during pregnancy, with diet and just movement and in ways that I didn't prep my body for the first time. And it made such a difference. Like with my first, I had pretty severe preeclampsia that went it was just kind of like breezed over. Like I was like had the most insane swelling I've seen in my entire life. And they were like, it's normal. I'm like, this is not normal. Like it was just so weird. But it's like you're a first time mom, your midwife's telling you it's fine. You're like, okay, but anyways, having a second like very healthy pregnancy with like no swelling, no blood pressure issues up until like the day my son was born. It was like I had done all of this research of like, okay, what actually can prevent preeclampsia? And I was like pretty sure about it, but it's one thing to like do this research and be like, oh, all of these things will help. And then it's another thing to like put those things into play and actually see it make a difference. So anywho, I am very passionate about talking about like birth after trauma, birth after like preeclampsia. I talk about that a lot. And I love home birth, obviously. But yeah, anyways, I'm in Texas. I've lived in Texas almost my whole life, minus 2 years that we lived in Indiana. And yeah, that's that.
I feel like there's so many questions I could ask based off of that. But I want to kind of hear just like what you notice. I guess the difference is you notice from like working in the hospital setting to what you're doing now, working with women and like just I guess the things that maybe didn't align with you so much in the hospital setting around birth versus what you're able to or how you're able to approach them now.
Yeah, so in the hospital, like, you go into a delivery room and like who's actually running the room, like it is 100% the OB. Like, and it shouldn't be that way. This is the mother's body. This is her birth. Like she knows her body better than any medical degree ever could. Mothers just know, like they just know, like they know when something's off. They know when things are fine. Like they just know. Gosh, I remember this is like so random, but I feel like this is such a good example. The page Built to Birth, I don't know if you follow her. What is her name? Like Bridget something. Anyways, she's a really great birth account to follow. I had shared one of her reels and I was still working for the OB-GYN at this time. And so like I feel like when I worked at the OB-GYN office, like I couldn't be as like radical as like I actually was, like there was still like a little bit of a filter. Like I kind of had to like hold myself back. But I had shared one of her reels and it was like why like in order to like keep mom in labor land, like mom should put headphones in and like if and have her birth plan like fully laid
Yes.
out. And if like nurses or whoever needs to come in and like they want to talk about like a change to her birth plan or like want to encourage like pitocin or bringing her water or whatever, like then they have to talk to the husband and like mom has her headphones in and she stays like locked in because as soon as you pull a mom out of that labor land, it disrupts the whole labor process. And I think that's like one thing that is there's just like zero respect in the hospital for that.
Mhm.
But I had shared that with like very little commentary and the like hate messages I got from labor and delivery nurses was insane. Like, well, how is she going to get informed consent if she has headphones in? And like, I was
Yeah.
just like, you're missing the whole point. Like, if a mom knows what she wants, unless baby's heart rate is like tanking and it's an absolute emergency, like,
Right.
she has laid out her whole desires for her birth. Yeah, I feel like there is zero respect for how labor is supposed to play out. Like nurses are constantly like coming in and the lights are really intense and there's all these beeping noises and like it's just not how we were created to give birth. And so stepping out of that. So my home birth was actually the first like home birth that I've ever been to. But it was just so different. Like my midwife was like in the other room half the time, like not bothering me
Mhm.
until like she heard me say something and she was like, I think I should like go in there. Like it's just very much like the mother knows what she's doing. Her body knows what to do. Like you just have to leave it alone long enough
Mhm.
to let it do it. Um,
I feel like that's the hard part of like how our intuition, like we're almost convinced that our intuition is not correct
mm-hmm,
too, of like we do know, like our body is created to do this. It knows what to do, but there's
mm-hmm,
so much, especially like being in the hospital setting of like you see all these things you're hooked up to, or they're asking you like, do you want Pitocin? Like there's so many questions too, where it's like, okay, but at the same time, like, isn't my body created to do this and do this without
mm-hmm.
a lot of intervention? Um, but we're convinced that we need a lot of intervention in order for things to be safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting of like the mentality of like, oh, like I would have died if I wasn't at the hospital. And it's like, would you though? Or would you have not had the complications that you had if you weren't in the hospital? Like it's just there's this narrative that like the hospital is so safe and home birth is really dangerous and reckless. And it's like, okay, there's risk no matter where you are. That's a part of birth. Like there is there is always risk in birth, but like the risk is going to be different. Like if you're at home, no, you're not right next to an OR, but like, hey, you're not right next to an OR, like
Mhm.
your body is going to be given a full chance, and like in the hospital, it's like so many interventions are just pushed unnecessarily because they get impatient, they put moms on a clock, they make up these policies and rules that are, they say that like hospital policy is about 10 years behind like current evidence-based practice. They are far behind what is like actually evidence-based practice, but nobody wants to change hospital policy. And so it's like they're just like stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like one of the things that really gets me riled up is when, and I've heard this story from a couple of people, of like they went to the doctor, they thought maybe like they were in labor, but the doctor was like, well, I'm here, like let's induce you, let's get it over with. And I'm
mm-hmm,
like, the fact that like it's on their timeline, it's during the daylight hours, like they're deciding when your body goes into labor, like that in itself just irritates me because it's like,
mm-hmm.
oh yeah, okay, so your labor is actually on my schedule, so let's do whatever we can to make sure it happens now while I'm here at the hospital.
Right. Yeah. And I felt like that's kind of how my C-section played out. Like my my son was not in distress. Like I had made it to complete and I had pushed for about 2.5 hours. And she was like, he's not moving, like we need to go back for a section. And I was like, can I just have time to just like stop pushing and just like let my body like move him down on its own? And she was like, no. And
Mm,
I was like, okay. And I worked for this OB at the time, so it's like I don't feel like I can fight back because it's
right.
like I is my job like kind of on the line here, like it was just
Right.
kind of a
And with it
weird.
being your first, that's hard too, because like you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what you don't know. That's like kind of how I
Right.
felt going in. I'm like, there's so many things I don't know. Like you can prepare as much as you can, but like
Mm-hmm.
there's still so much that but I guess you've worked in that field. So I'm sure you like knew what your body like was intended to do, but it is hard when
Mm-hmm.
there's that pushback or when there's even hospital policies that prevent you from doing things one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I really do feel like it was like she just didn't want to have to come back later. Like she just wanted my birth to be done. It had gone on for 56 hours and she just wanted to be done with it. And so I always have the question of like, what if she would have given me more time? Like would it have made a difference? It might not have.
Right.
But it also might have. Like it's just I don't know. It's just those things that keep me up
You
at night a little
replay.
bit.
Yes. So if you think about, I mean, obviously your first labor was different than your second, right? With
Mhm.
having one at home. What do you feel like kind of that experience that you could even tell women, like if they're wanting to prepare their body for birth, like what are like three things that you would say they should be doing?
I think preconception matters a lot. I know you've been talking about that. It matters a lot just how you prepare your body for birth, or for pregnancy, how your partner prepares, because sperm health makes a big, big difference in the health of your pregnancy. Um, so, just preparing for that. And then during pregnancy, my biggest, like, I think every single woman in pregnancy should be on the brewer diet, which make sure I get this right. So the brewer diet, it's like the so if you go on the website, it's like I don't know what it's called, like the brewer pregnancy diet or something. Um if you Google brewer diet, it'll take you to the
Mhm.
website, but it'll show like different, like you need to eat like 8 eggs a day or something, but it's very confusing, but it comes down to this. It's 2,600 calories a day, 80 to 120 grams of protein a day, unrestricted weight gain, and salt to taste. So, the advice that like you should limit salt in pregnancy is
Yeah.
so wrong, like so incorrect. And so, like really focusing on protein, like don't skip meals, don't skip breakfast. I don't care how busy you are, like you've got to eat breakfast. And I think nutrition in pregnancy matters so much. And that's like the baseline of like, so Dr. Brewer was like he was an OB-GYN, and he basically did all of this research and found that most pregnancy complications, like high blood pressure, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction, anemia, premature labor, placental abruption, low birth weight. They were all linked to food deficiency and low blood volume. And so he found that, those four main components
Yeah.
could prevent all of those things. So that's like a main one that I recommend. And then also things like physical movement. So like
Yes.
hip mobility exercises were like huge for me for my VBAC. Get a birth ball and just like move your hips, and just get, that mobility and stretching, and spinning babies is another really great thing. If you've never heard of it, it's like three different exercises or like positions. So there's a like forward leaning inversion where basically like your knees are like up on a couch or like a chair or something, and then your upper body is down on the ground, so you're
Mm-hmm.
basically like hanging kind of upside down.
Yeah.
And you just hang out there for a couple minutes. That helps pull baby out of the pelvis, gives them room so that when you get back up, they can come back down in a better position. So there's that one. And then there's the jiggle, which is literally like if you were to take your hand and like if you put it on top of like a body of water, you're just trying to make it like ripple a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just this like slight jiggle, and you do it on the side of the hip. So usually this would be like your husband doing it for you.
Yeah.
But that is just going to loosen the fascia. And it's like crazy. You'll do it for like 5 minutes and it'll just put you in this like trance. Like it is the most relaxing thing ever. But that's just gonna, loosen things again, release the fascia and like any tension that's in the pelvis. And then the last one is going to be the side lying release. And you do that on both sides. So you lay on one side. This is going to have to include your husband. Like he would have to kind of support your body so you don't fall off. But basically your leg is like draped over the side of the bed. You're lying on your side with your top leg draped over. And the idea is that your leg will drop, and it's going to release again tension in the hips. So you do it on both sides. Anyways, you can find that on like the Spinning Babies website. And I feel like I don't did you do Spinning Babies at all? Like have you heard of it before?
No, I did different, like I did those exercises, but I had never heard what it was called.
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting because I felt like with my first, like it was so stressed. Like, do Spinning Babies, do Spinning Babies. And it's almost like Spinning Babies is gonna like save you. But it's like that is not, there's so many other things that matter equally,
Yes.
like let's do like actual hip mobility, like let's focus on our diet, let's like get our stress down,
Mhm.
like squats. Oh man, squats are like a game changer for preparing for birth. The one thing that I like recommend my clients do is I tell them while you're brushing your teeth, because your toothbrush is set. If you have an electric toothbrush, like it'll go off after 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So like just do squats like that entire time. Just like while you're brushing your teeth, just do squats as many as you can in those 2 minutes. If you've got older kids and you're like picking up toys off the floor, like squat to pick up the toys, like literally just as much as you can, just squat. And it's so interesting because like the OB that I worked for would tell her moms not to do squats during pregnancy.
There's
And it's just
so
like
much
so
like
crazy.
it's so, yeah, it is so different. Even like lifting heavy weight during pregnancy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was lifting my heaviest weight. Even now, like I probably would not be squatting that much weight or single leg squatting. Like, and I went up and would increase and would increase. And my body was like, I mean, obviously you're putting on weight. I had that too. Like I didn't weigh myself. I didn't count
Mm-hmm.
calories. Like I really ate what I felt like I needed to eat. And was very in tune with that. But like how much faster I felt like I built muscle during pregnancy too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I know it is hard, like when you're lifting weights, then of like your body tends to tense up too. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
like that hip mobility is really big. But yeah, how that's so opposite of what you're told. Like don't lift
Mm-hmm.
anything over 50 pounds. Like did complete opposite of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I love how you integrate, like how you even shared, like while you're brushing your teeth, do squats, just like integrating it into your lifestyle. Because I
Mhm.
know, like, once for me too, like, once I have more than one kid, like, it's not going to be going to the gym and working out like I did before I had kids. It was like, or when I was just pregnant. But yeah, that's
Mhm.
just one way to like integrate it into your routine.
I'll be honest, like I did not really work out when I was pregnant with my VBAC baby. But it was like again, I was moving, like I
Yes.
was doing those hip mobilities and, squats as I was thinking about it. Like it doesn't have to be like I'm going to the gym every day.
Yes.
Like it doesn't have
Yep.
to be that like it can be very easy, and it doesn't have to feel like a workout, It can yeah, like it can literally, like you said, like it can just be in your life,
Mhm.
make it a part of your day.
Let's dive into preeclampsia because even you saying that it's preventable, I know is controversial, probably like
Mm-hmm.
hot take,
Yeah.
but is a belief I've had for a long time. But I would just love to hear your perspective and kind of what leads you to say that, and even just how what your own experience was like with maybe preventing that with your second birth.
Yeah, so I think the more that I just like looked into it, and it's like you hear people talking about like, oh, it can be prevented and it can be reversed. And I think the main, getting into my doula mentorship, like there are women chatting in there all of the time. And preeclampsia was always a big thing. And it was like they would have, somebody would come in the chat and be like, my mom is starting to show signs of like swelling and like high blood pressure. And everybody would just be like, emergency brewer diet, which is so insane. It's literally 17 eggs and 2 quarts of raw milk a day. Isn't that insane?
That's insane.
But you do it for 3 days. So it's not like
Okay.
forever, but you do it for 3 days. And like typically by the end of that 3 days, like it is like so much better. And then you just like continue on like the regular brewer diet as you keep going throughout your pregnancy. But the more that I researched about it, I was like, this actually makes so much sense because when I was pregnant with my first, I wasn't doing any sort of like electrolytes or minerals or anything. I wasn't eating breakfast because I was working full time and just, if I did eat breakfast, it was literally a bag of Cheerios. Like, yeah, life was way different back then. So it's like I'm getting 2 meals a day. Like you're not gonna get 100 grams of protein from 2 meals a
Right.
day and like no snacks or like any snacks that I had was like just pure carbs. I didn't really move my body at all, which that doesn't really relate to preeclampsia, but I wasn't. I just use like conventional salt, so the salt that you use matters if you didn't know. Um,
Matters a
but
lot,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. But sodium is like a really big deal,
Yeah.
in pregnancy and especially with like fluid retention. But it also needs to be balanced with other electrolytes like potassium. And so, anyways, I had done some research and, the main thing that even midwives will recommend for like if you have a history of preeclampsia is taking baby aspirin. And my midwife recommended it. Like she was like, I think this would probably be a good idea. I just for some reason was like, I just don't want to. Like I was like, this is a pharmaceutical and just like something in me was like it just didn't feel right. And it feels right for other women and that's great. I just personally didn't feel like I wanted to do that. And there are also studies that show that taking like a high dose of calcium, like a calcium supplement, is more effective in preventing preeclampsia than baby aspirin is. And so I took I think it was like a 1,000 milligrams, maybe 1,200 or something of calcium. So I did that. Things like Nora tea, that's super high in like everything. And Nora tea is great for everybody, preeclampsia or not. It's just a really good way to stay hydrated, get some like really, really good minerals. Going to support your uterus, support healthy blood flow. Like there's just a lot of benefits to Nora tea. But yeah, pretty much like the brewer diet, salt, magnesium is also a really good one for pregnancy. And making sure you're hydrated with like minerals, like not just plain water, but adding things into your water. Even if like So I used Redmond Relight during my pregnancy because it's very high sodium content. But if you had one that was like more potassium forward, you could like add salt to it. Coconut water is great, salt. Just put salt in your water. But yeah, so those are like the main things that, like, I don't know, just when I implemented those, it was like night and day difference. And it would be like I would, if I ever noticed any swelling, I could like trace it back and be like, I actually haven't had a ton of like minerals the past, 3 days or something. So it was just kind of like wild. Like, I don't know. It's just so funny because I'll get accused on Instagram of like spreading this information. Like, you can't prevent preeclampsia. Like, it's genetic. And it's like, I mean, sure. I'm sure parts of it is genetic, but like a lot of it has to do with that. And they've also traced preeclampsia back to low progesterone too. And so like making sure that your progesterone is really good in early pregnancy. And um, another one is sperm health. And so again, preconception, like it matters. If your husband's like drinking beer all the time and like not eating very good, like that all matters.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
I do think it's interesting, like the genetic piece, because I'm like, but also how you eat is probably like just the habit of food that you gravitate towards is something that is learned. So, like, if your
mhm,
family ate one way and you see that that's the way to eat, like, you're going to eat the same way. And so, like, the
mhm,
quality of food that you're consuming, or the belief that like salt makes you puff up or salt makes you like retain more water. It's like, well, the type of
mhm,
salt, like you said many times, like the type of salt is what matters.
right.
And making sure, yeah, you're balancing your minerals, those major minerals is huge.
Yes.
Especially because even before pregnancy, like through doing HCMA testing, like everybody is depleted in sodium
Mhm.
and potassium for sure. And then there's a slew of other minerals that are contributing to that. So it
Mhm.
is just interesting in that obviously just increases
Right.
when you're pregnant as
Right.
well. If you kind of go then, so that's pregnancy. What about labor? Are there things, or is there one thing that you really want women to know about labor as they maybe are approaching that if they're currently expecting?
I feel like your mindset is like so neglected. Like nobody talks about your mindset. It's like you'll take these childbirth education classes and it's basically like an anatomy lesson. And it's like all of that information is so great. Like I want every woman to understand like the stages of labor and like what's happening in your body and like kind of what it feels like, what to expect for postpartum and like preparing to like breastfeed. Like that's another thing is I feel like women don't prepare for breastfeeding. And that is so important. If you go in like, so I'll speak, from my first birth. Like I went in with the background of working in labor and delivery, and like I wasn't having a home birth, I was having a birth center birth with my first. But it was like I still kind of thought like home birth was kind of reckless, and in my mind like the birth center is like this perfect media. But there's always the backup of transfer, and like I don't know, like if you are going into birth and you're like, okay, I'm gonna try for a natural birth, like 9 times out of 10 it's not gonna happen because you're not showing up like, no, I'm gonna do it, unless there's like an absolute emergency, of course. But like, I think we've I feel like our society has become so like soft with birth of like, well, it's just unpredictable and you just never know what's going to happen. So like you just need to go in without a plan and like whatever happens happens.
I
And
hate that phrase.
yeah. Like,
Hate that phrase.
yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. Like,
Yeah, and all that matters is a healthy baby. Like, it's just we've gotten soft, and it's like if you show up with conviction, people are like, well, things could go wrong. Well, like you need to be like open to things not going the way you want. Like birth rarely goes the way you want. And it's like it is okay to show up with a very strong conviction. It is okay to be like, no, I'm not getting an epidural, actually. No, I don't see, like I don't have like an escape plan. Like I don't, I'm just gonna do it. Like I feel like it's just not talked about. Another thing is like releasing any fears that you have. So with my first, I probably would have told you that I didn't have any fear because I was like, kind of arrogant about it. Like I was just like, no, I worked in labor and delivery. Like I know what's what and all of this stuff. And I think like I could have sat with, like, I had this huge fear of failure because it's like my birth was so, sounds weird, but it was so public. Like I went to the hospital that I used to work at, and like everybody knew like what I talked about on social media and like what I was planning. And then it was like I did have to transfer, and then I did end up in a C-section. And it was like, okay, those fears that I didn't address actually like came to fruition. And now I was like postpartum having to process
Mhm.
that, you know, rather than in pregnancy, like sitting with that fear and getting to a point where you're like, okay, even if that happens, I'll be okay. You know, that was one thing, like when preparing for my VBAC, as I was like, I was terrified of ending up in a repeat C-section and like, again, feeling like I failed. But instead of just being like, it's fine, or like, I'm not even going to think about it. Like I thought about it and I sat with it until I got to the point where I was like, okay, like if the Lord has that as a part of my story, like I will be okay. You know, I wasn't okay for a while. Like I was like, no, absolutely not. I will not be okay. And this is something that I offer in, I have like a birth guide, and that's a big portion of it is working through your mindset and releasing your fears. Like I have like a 3-day like fear release process where it's like you're naming your fears. You are like literally like writing out like what is your worst case scenario, like what is your worst fear, and like thinking through that and then being like, okay, how do I one, release that,
Mhm.
and you know, like surrender my birth over to the Lord because that birth story is already written. How do I, you know, release that, and then how do I like fill my mind with like scripture and truth? um so anyways, I do feel like the mindset, working through fears, like huge part of labor. And you know, there's something called the fear tension pain cycle, where it's like you have these fears and you don't address them, it's going to lead to tension, and like tightness in your body. And tension and tightness is going to increase your pain. And then an increase in pain is going to, again, reinforce your fears. And it's just like
Yeah.
a terrible cycle that you have to address it before it starts.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like that's huge. That's something I'm going to need. Not that I had my first birth was fine, but like it is just like the knowing that you're entering into that level of pain or discomfort or just it's honestly just uncomfortable, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I love too how you shared of like going in with the belief that this is what's going to happen, or like, no, I'm not going to get an epidural. And like that was
Mm-hmm.
something I had told myself from the beginning of like, I want a natural birth. That I don't want an epidural, but that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't an option for me. And I feel like if there's a way that you want to deliver your child, like you can plan for that. Like you said, like you can plan for what
Mm-hmm.
you want it to look like. Things might go differently, but yeah, there's a lot of softness, or like, what do you have to prove? Like, you don't have anything to prove by having a natural birth. Like, you don't, I've heard
Mm-hmm.
like, you don't get an award for delivering a
Yeah.
baby without an epidural. And it's just all of this like talk that almost like it doesn't encourage women to go into it with like a very natural mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what, I guess, kind of like final takeaways for somebody if they are currently pregnant, or yeah, I would say honestly, just currently pregnant, that you would say would be the one thing that they should be doing every single day. If you can pick one thing.
The one. But I feel like the thing I would add on to that is like prayer. You know, again, working through your fears and like surrendering those over to the Lord, like just being like in a constant dialogue of like what you're struggling with, like where, you know, you need support, and like even like inviting the Holy Spirit into like your pregnancy and your birth and your labor. And that is another part of my guide, is like how do you interact with the Holy Spirit during pregnancy and like during labor. And you know, how are you discerning like fear from like the Holy Spirit, and what does like listening to the Holy Spirit, like what does that look like, you know? um but I do feel like it made such a difference in my labor of just like inviting, like literally my prayer was like, Lord, let it be like so obvious that you are real in my birth. Like that's what I wanted my birth to feel like.
Mhm.
Um and there were so many times when I would like feel like just nudges from the Holy Spirit of like, get into this position, or like do this, or, whatever. And then, prayers throughout labor of like, Lord, like I need more strength, like give me more strength. Like, um, one of my favorite like birth affirmations, which I also sell birth affirmations, by the way. One of my favorite ones is like, when I've reached the end of my strength, I've only found the beginning of yours. Um, and so that was just like a constant prayer throughout labor. But I think preparing spiritually, is just as important as the physical, and eating well.
And that's something that obviously you don't get in the traditional healthcare setting. Like nobody's really
Mm-hmm.
talking about that, or
Right.
talking about how you can focus on the mind and add in that spiritual side to having, yeah, a labor that I don't know, even just makes you feel at peace. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah. Well, we had worship music playing the whole time during my labor, and I just felt
Mm-hmm.
like, like there's certain songs that I'll hear, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is what happened when like this is the moment when I heard this song when I was in labor. And there's
Mm-hmm.
just so many really cool things that can happen when you do lean on the Lord throughout your pregnancy and especially throughout labor. Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a vulnerable time. I was not even scared, but yeah, you're just worried for sure if it's the first time you're ever
Mm-hmm.
delivering a baby, like there is just unknowns. But I feel
Right.
like, and you've touched on this, ways that people can prepare for labor and delivery is by being informed and knowing what to do. So you have a birth guide that I want you to share about, kind of like what can people expect from that? What do you share within that? Something that I'm for sure downloading and purchasing from you just with hearing you talk. And yeah, there's just so much to it. So I'd love to hear more about that and what you've worked on.
Yeah, so it is called the unconventional birth method. It is, gosh, I think it's 271 pages. So it's very robust. It's going to be like basically all of your childbirth education, that you would get from like a childbirth education course. But then, like I said, it's also working through mindset, releasing your fears, like the spiritual side of things. Like there's prayers throughout the whole thing. I talk through, like diet, and nourishment, and yeah, like movement. It's very practical. Like it's gonna lay everything out, like what your diet should look like, the benefits of Nora tea. Like it's just very thorough as far as like throughout pregnancy, like really preparing your body. And then, there's like a VBAC section. So if you are a C-section mom, it's gonna talk you through like actual statistics, like no fear mongering on VBAC. And it's going to talk about the nervous system, like how to support your nervous system throughout pregnancy. That's a huge thing for a healthy pregnancy too, is just being able to like not be in fight or flight all the time. But then, it's also going to give you like, kind of like what we talked about, like the anatomy lesson of like understanding the stages of labor, what's happening like as soon as the baby is born, like what happens to your hormones, and what happens postpartum, and all of that. There's a section for like navigating birth after trauma, and just kind of like working through processing through like previous births, and showing grace for yourself, and what you didn't know, and working through again fears of like being afraid, after trauma. There's a section on pregnancy after loss. I even talk you through like choosing your birth team. So I actually recommend getting this pretty early on. Like I think a lot of childbirth education is like, oh, you take it in the third trimester, and it's like, it's like a once a week course for 5 weeks or something. But this is going to walk you through like from choosing your birth team, like all the way through like troubleshooting breastfeeding
Mhm.
complications.
Wow.
There's a lot of breastfeeding education in it, a lot of information on postpartum and like how to support yourself postpartum. It's not home birth specific. It's actually for anybody. If you are planning a physiologic birth, this is going to be for you no matter where. But it is going to talk through like, at the hospital when you're like putting together your birth plan, it's going to chat through like, Pitocin and give you, it basically is going to give you like full informed consent on all the things like Pitocin, epidural, IV pain meds, breaking your water, like what to do when your water breaks on its own. And I do feel like this is important for home birth moms too, in case of a transfer. Obviously we don't want to think about that, but it's something that's important to sit with of like, you'd rather be prepared than unprepared,
Yeah.
or over prepared than not prepared at all. There's also a section on prepping your partner for birth. So it's actually very like, okay, in this trimester of pregnancy, like expect for her to be super tired,
Yeah.
it's just
That's
very
so,
practical.
yes.
Um, and just be like, give tips for like things to say to encourage her and like tips for like how to help out. Because if men are like my husband, it's like they want to be helpful, but they don't know what to do. And a lot of times, like we are just so tired that we don't even know how to communicate what we need. And so I love this portion of it. It also is going to be like in each stage of labor, like what are things you can suggest? There's also like partner supported labor positions and like pictures in there. And then I have like a checklist for postpartum of like, has she eaten like a protein rich meal in the past like 2 hours or whatever? Does she need to process her birth? Like, does she need a visit from a friend, or does she need like alone time? Does she need a nap? Does she need a shower? Does she need to go wash her face? Like, it's just very like practical in helping the husband care for his wife, because his role as like protector and like nurturer makes such a difference in how mom is able to care for baby.
Yeah.
um
That's
so
huge.
anyways.
That's so needed too. Cause like, my husband often was like, I want to help you, but I don't know what to do. Like it lays
Hmm.
out what they can do for you or what, especially during labor. I think that's kind of
Hmm.
like a fear maybe that they even have of like, I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to respond in that
Hmm.
situation.
Yeah.
But it just prepares the both of you together. Just like how preconception health is for the two of you, like labor, delivery, I think is for the both of you too, to just know what,
Hmm.
I guess, prepare as much as you can together on
Yeah.
what can happen. And to have all
Anyways.
that information in one place is really big, and I think underrated sometimes. Of like, you're not grabbing 7 different books or having to read through all these different books. Like, I read through way too many, like for my pregnancy, and labor and delivery and how to eat,
Hmm.
and to have that all in one place is really important because you're not having to do all this research on your own. You found one person that you trust or maybe a
Hmm.
few people you trust, and that's the resource you're going to use.
Right.
So how can people get connected with you, find this guide and everything?
Yeah, so my Instagram is unconventionally M, and pretty much everything is going to be there. I love chatting and just hearing everybody's birth stories. It's like my favorite thing. And it's just something that I really value is, women trusting me enough to come tell me their stories. So I love to hear them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have so much good information on your page. So I'm going to link everything in the description of today's podcast episode. So you can click on her Instagram. I'll link the birth guide directly as well. So if people want to check that out. But thank you so much, Emily, for being on. I think what's so special about you is you have the RN experience, but then also now you're a doula. So you've seen both worlds and like really give a unique perspective to birth, and what that can look like. So thank you so much for being on today's episode.
Yes, thank you for having me. I loved it.